Hello and welcome back to Gapeys Garden. Today we're going to be taking a look at all of the peppers in the garden, those that are in the greenhouse as well as those that are in containers and in the raised beds. So we're starting to see a lot cooler temperatures and a lot more rain. We're supposed to get up to an inch of rain tomorrow. So let's take a look at how everything is looking in mid-September. Let's get started. Let's start by taking a look at the wild South American peppers. This one here is the Tovari. It was the last one to set any pods, and we do have a few pods on this plant you can see, but I don't think we've gotten any ripe ones just yet, but it is covered in pods. There's lots of branches just kind of going every which way. This is a cooler climate plant, so I may try overwintering these guys, but hopefully we'll get some ripe fruit off of that here pretty soon. So I've got two of these in containers. There's this one here, and then this one here that is next to it. This one got a little bit taller. It's got one single branch here that just kind of took off and got really tall. It's probably about 4.5 feet tall maybe. And then the one next to that is the Cardinacea, and this one is a pretty scraggly, really tall pepper plant. And you can see I've got some really tall supports here. This one is probably 5 feet tall, I'm guessing, but we do have quite a bit of ripe fruit that we got off of this one. You can see a few, they're really teeny tiny pods. And we've got another one. This one over here has a lot more ripe pods on it, but this one didn't get quite as tall as the other one. But we do have lots of ripe fruit on there. But this one also has some nice big tall supports so it doesn't flop over. So the third of the wild peppers is the Capsicum flexuosum, and I really like the look of this plant. It stayed pretty short and bushy, but the pods, however, were not so great. A lot of them are, they don't have any seeds, so they never really, I'm not sure if it's a pollination issue or what, but a lot of pretty much all the peppers were this tiny kind of flat pod shape, which those peppers don't have any seeds at all. And that happened on both of these. I think there was one pod that actually did get, looks like it's supposed to. So there's this one here. So you can see how big and round that one is. So there should be some seeds in there, but all the rest of the pods on this plant are all really tiny and flat and probably don't have any seeds in them. But they are still pretty tasty. They're not very hot, but they've got a kind of a fruity, interesting flavor. And we still have lots of pods on there and lots of flowers too. So we're gonna try and overwinter that guy too. And we've got the other one over here, kind of the same deal. I don't see any ripe on this one though, but it is covered in pods and covered in flowers. Now this container pepper is actually a clone I took off of the Española pepper when I was transplanting it into the garden, and I rooted it in a cup of water, and this is how much it's grown since I did that. And it's actually been really productive. There's a lot of pods set on there. I've harvested a few, and there's some that are just starting to ripen, but they do get early dark red, and they're a pretty tasty sweet pepper. Not really any heat, but it's a good pepper that I like using in cooking. So we got that, and then the only other container peppers I have are these pepper in a can. So this one here is the Onyx Red. So we've got some tiny little purple pods that turn red when they're ripe, and the leaves are nice dark purple color, and it stayed pretty nice and small and bushy. It is an ornamental variety that doesn't get very big, so it was a perfect candidate for growing in a can. And then I also went with a Aji Charapita, and this guy got really tall and then just kind of forked at the top, and we did finally get some pods set on there, but it's looking pretty sad, as you can see. And we do have a couple of peppers that are orange, which are ready to pick, so we'll see if we can get any seeds out of those. But this variety doesn't get very big pods, so this is pretty much, I think, the size they normally get, but the plant itself is, the leaves are just really tiny and just not looking very good. And then the other one that I grew is this Numex Twilight. And here's the can on this one. But this one did really, really well, super productive. The pods changed from, I think it went from green to purple, and then the final color is red. So we've got a ton of pods on that one, but it is kind of a little bit tall, and it's got a couple pods down here towards the base as well. But it didn't do too bad. Now next up we have our mini olive ricotos, and I grew 2 of these this year, and this was the plant that I was really, really looking forward to the most that I grew this year. And it did have some rabbit damage, so you can see this kind of green plastic fencing that I put around it. That's to keep the rabbit out, because he was chowing down on the leaves. But we do have some peppers that are just finally starting to ripen. Let's see if we can show you those. So that one is just starting to ripen. They should turn a kind of an olive green color. These ones look like they have a slight, maybe slight brown color. So I think I haven't harvested any of these yet. They're still working on ripening, so hopefully they don't take too much longer. And then I've got another plant behind it with lots of pods set on it, but none of these look like they are starting to ripen yet. So I was hoping, since they're a smaller variety, they wouldn't take as long to ripen, but it's looking like that may not be the case. Now over here in the raised bed we have a few capsicum annuums, some new Mexican varieties, and you may notice something missing in this bed. I had 2 tomatillos in either corner of this bed that I removed. I think it was maybe early last month. I'm not sure if they were in the video in my last update, but they are gone now, so the peppers have a lot more space and a lot more sun. So I think they've been doing a lot better since I got rid of those tomatillo plants. So this first one here is the Cajun Bell. I've harvested a few peppers off those, but not a whole lot. We've got a few peppers that are just starting to ripen up. They eventually turn red, and hopefully we'll get a few more out of there before the season ends. And then next to that is the Española. So this is the parent off of that pepper in a container that I showed you before. So we've got quite a few. There's some different looking pods here. This one's kind of pointy, but most of them aren't quite as pointy, I think. But we've got a few that are just starting to ripen. So it hasn't been super productive, but it hasn't been too bad. And then next to that we have the Estacino. This one is a New Mexican variety, and I've harvested a fair amount off of this one. So they're best when they're green, kind of like an Anaheim type pepper. This one is starting to turn red, but I've made some chili, and I put some also in a green hot sauce. So this is a really nice variety. And then behind that we have Chimeo, and this is another New Mexican variety, and this one has been probably the most productive of the New Mexican varieties. And this one eventually will turn a really dark green color. This one is actually starting to turn a little bit red, but they do get pretty dark green, which is a pretty neat and productive little plant here. And then this one behind here is the Pasilla. And we didn't get too many peppers off of this one, but the ones we did get were pretty good size peppers. But this might be I guess we do have a couple more in the back here. Not sure if you can see those. But we've got, I think, 3 peppers left on this plant. So this one is pretty close to being done. And then we've got one more plant back here, and this one is the Orange Spice Jalapeno. And we have, I think, it's been getting pretty small peppers, so there's one there. But I've picked, I think, maybe 3 pods off of it, but it's getting pretty loaded with pods. They're just taking a long time to ripen. All right, now for the greenhouse peppers. It probably looks a lot different in here than it did in my previous updates, because the bush beans are finally done. I got a ton of bush beans out of this area, but I'm not sure if it was worth it because it was really obstructing the growth of the peppers. So there's a few, I don't know if that's the cause of it, but I have a few peppers that have yet to set any pods at all, which has never ever happened before. So one of those is the Scarlet Rose, which is a Kangstar cross. We did get a lot of flower pods, but they're not flower pods, but we got a lot of flowers formed on the plant, but just not a single pod has set that I've seen. There's just nothing. And then the one next to that is also a related one called the Peach Star Kiss, also a Kangstar cross. And I did actually get a few pods off of this, maybe 2 or 3, but I haven't gotten any since probably in the last 2 months. I haven't seen any more pods set at all on that plant. So those 2 varieties were a big fail for me. And then also, actually this one has pods on it at least. This is the giant habanero, and we've got two pods on one stem here, and then we've got one over there, and I think that's it on this plant. I haven't harvested any of the peppers, and maybe, I'm not sure how much bigger they're gonna get, but maybe we'll get some ripe pods off of that plant. And then the other one that did terribly is this white ghost. So this is another one that not a single pod was set on this plant, and there's a few flowers on it, but there's really not much of anything going on with that one. So I'm about to pull all of those peppers out that don't have any pods on them, because there's no point in leaving them in the ground, because they just, even if they set a pod right now, there's not enough time in the season for them to mature. So those are going to be gone probably this week. And then this one here is the Datil, another one that was not productive. I think I only harvested 1 or 2 really tiny pods off of it, but we do have this one here and another little pod there that might ripen before the end of the season, but that's it on that plant. So that one's another, I thought Datil was supposed to be a really productive pepper, but it just was not for me. And then another big fail. All the plants on this side of the greenhouse were pretty much fails. This one is the Pink Tiger crossed with the Peach Boot. It's a beautiful, beautiful plant. I mean, these leaves are just gorgeous. They're a dark green and purple, really pretty. And I did harvest one little teeny tiny pod off of it about probably a month and a half ago, and nothing since then, not even a flower. There's no flowers at all on this entire plant. It looks like some are maybe starting to form right there. But yeah, so this is another pepper plant that is getting ripped out. And then we have the Tennessee Blackout, and this is a pretty rare cross that a friend gave me that I'm not sure if anybody else is growing, but it's got some similar colored leaves as the one I just showed you. It's really maybe a little bit more purple in it, but it's got really pretty foliage on it. And we do have a few flowers in there, but really no pods are setting except for a couple way down at the bottom. So we have this little teeny tiny pod, and it hasn't grown at all in like a month. So I don't know if it's gonna change colors or if that's the final color, but we've got 2 of these little tiny pods on this plant. So I don't know what to do with that one. I may just kind of chop it down since there's nothing going on in those 2, and just let those 2 bottom pods grow, see if they get any bigger. I don't know. So the only really productive plant on this side of the greenhouse is this guy. I mean, check out all of these pods. It's just completely loaded. So this is the Tabasco crossed with the bubblegum, and it's very hot and just a beautiful, beautiful plant. I'm really glad I grew this one because It's the only pepper plant I grew that's hot that produced any pods. So I'm definitely going to be saving seeds from this one. It doesn't bleed like a bubblegum normally does, but hey, the productivity is just really makes up for it. So that is an absolutely beautiful, productive plant. Highly recommended. Now the peppers on the other side of the greenhouse I had a much better luck with. These aren't as hot though. These are mostly capsicum annuums and a couple capsicum baccatums. So the biggest ones are the baccatums, like this one here. This is the apple crisp, which is a really, really productive. It's supposed to be a sweet pepper, but these have a bit of heat. I think a little more heat than they're supposed to. But they are pretty sweet and they have very thick walls, so they do take a little bit longer to ripen, but it's a really productive plant. There's tons of pods in here, and I've already harvested and made some sauce out of probably a dozen or so pods that I've harvested. So we've got a nice collection of pods there. And then the one in front of it, I think this one is also a baccatum. This one is the, let's see, the Peppa Peach, and I think it might be slightly related to the Sugar Rush Peach. I'm not sure, but it's got some kind of roundish shaped pods, and this is another one that has really thick walls. But I think they might supposed to get a little bit bigger than this, but we've got pretty much loaded pods on the branches of this one, and they just keep getting taller and taller and taller. So this one is all the way up to here, which is probably a little over 4 feet tall, and it's really a tasty sweet pepper. And this one actually is supposed to be kind of hot, but for the ones on this particular pepper plant, there's really not much heat at all on those. And then we've also got the shishito here, which is a very popular variety, and this one got some really big, you can see how big that pod is there. Not all of them were that big, but we're getting some pretty good sized pods late in the season here. But this one has been really productive, and this one's best picked when it's green. Once they turn red, they get kind of rubbery skin, so you definitely want to harvest those when they're green. Unless you're saving seeds, then you want to wait till they turn red. And then behind that we have the sweet banana pepper, and I've been picking quite a few peppers off of that one, but I think it's just about done producing peppers. We've got, I think this is the biggest one on it right now. And people harvest this while it's green, and as well it's good when it's red as well. I prefer them when they're red, but they're good either way. So yeah, that one's just about done, so I may pull that one out as well. My favorite sweet pepper this season is this Violet Sparkle, which I haven't grown before, but I will definitely be growing again. It gets these really big, kind of purplish and like a light yellow green color, and it is super, super productive. That's one of the reasons I don't like growing sweet peppers or like the bell peppers, because they're never very productive. But this one is definitely more productive than a regular bell pepper, and the color of the peppers is just really nice, and they eventually turn red. This is probably the smallest pepper that it's produced, but they do eventually turn red, and I usually like to harvest them when they're red. We've got another branch coming out here in the back that's also loaded with more pods. There's probably at least like a dozen peppers on that plant right now, so I highly recommend that one if you haven't given it a try. And then behind that we've got a Thai pepper. So I like to usually grow at least one Thai pepper every year, and this year I went with the Black Orchid Cafe, and I did just recently harvest all the red peppers off of it, so right now there's just the unripe ones, which you can also eat those when they're green too. But they've got black pods, and they've got some green also in there, but mostly they're black. They're not super hot, but they've got some heat enough to, one pepper is probably good enough to spice up any meal. And then this guy here is just really getting kind of out of control. This is actually, let's see, this is the orange ripple, which is a cross, and I was gonna plant it on the other side of the greenhouse because I think it does have a chinense in it, but look at this pod. They've got some pretty wicked looking tails on a lot of the peppers. Not all of them have that tail, but some of them do. And I think I've picked maybe one pod off of this guy, but there's tons and tons of pods on this plant. So I'm gonna keep this one in here as long as I possibly can so we can get some of these guys to ripen. But I really like the shape of these guys. I just wish it wouldn't take so long to ripen. Look at that tail. Pretty cool little pepper. And then back here we've got a paprika called Bulldog, and this one is more of a sweet paprika. The paprikas I've grown in the last few years have been kind of a hot variety, but this one should be more sweet, and it gets really dark, deep red colored peppers. So I haven't actually harvested any of those yet. I'm waiting. Actually, I probably will harvest some of these soon because I wanted to wait until more of them were ripe because I plan on smoking these and then making a powder out of them because I want to do a smoked paprika. So I want to get as many ripe as possible so that I could smoke them all at once. But we do have quite a few peppers on this plant, so hopefully I'll be able to get that done soon. And then this one here, I haven't harvested any peppers on this one yet. This is the monkey face red, but we've got some ripe peppers, so I will definitely be harvesting some soon. And I might add these to a hot sauce that I'm going to be making here probably this week. We've got quite a few pods that are ripe in there that are ready to pick, so I'm going to do that probably in the next couple of days. But they are pretty good size pods, and I'm looking forward to trying those. And then this one here, this is the Mira Polish White, or at least it was supposed to be, but it never actually turned white, so I'm not sure if it got crossed with something or if it's not even that plant or not, but it got super, let's see, you can see this one here. The pods are humongous, but they just go from green to red, and we've got one that's turning red back here. Look at the size of those guys. So I think I've harvested maybe 2 or 3 off of it, but we've got, I think, 3 that are still growing in here. That should be ripe soon. But it is a really tasty pepper, just not very productive since the pods get so darn huge. And then the last 2 peppers I have are both gochus, but they're different varieties of gochu. So this one here is the Qiangyang, and let's see if we could find some ripe ones in here. So this one is a longer, thinner walled gochu variety, but it's also a lot hotter. Actually, this one is getting kind of soft. It's probably overripe. But I planned on using this for a dried pepper powder, but I don't know, we'll see. I didn't actually get that much of a harvest off of these guys, so I've just been using it fresh in cooking and not collecting them for drying, so not as productive as the gochu that I normally grow. So I don't really like this one. I don't like the thin walls that this one has, and it's a little too hot for what I like to use it for, so I'm not sure I'll grow that one again. And then we also have back here one called Lady Choi, and Lady Choi is a much milder one, and it's got super thick walls, and the pods are really big as well. So this one is just starting to turn red, and we've got a few more pods back here that are getting pretty big. That should maybe, oops, accidentally picked that one. But I think you can eat these while green as well, so I'll just save that one for dinner, I guess. But we've got a few pods on there that should hopefully ripen up before the end of the season. We also have this pepper called a Time Bomb back here in the corner of the greenhouse that I keep forgetting about. It was kind of thrown in kind of last minute, and I got that one from a neighbor, kind of an unplanned pepper that he gave me, so I just tossed it back here kind of in the corner, so it's not in the best location but it did get some pods on it. You can see there's quite a few ripe ones. So I guess people use this variety for pickling primarily. So I may give pickling these peppers a try and see how they are. But I think this is I think it's kind of a sweet and a hot maybe variety, but it feels like it's got some pretty thick walls and might be good for stuffing maybe some cheese in as well. But it was actually ended up being a pretty productive little pepper, and they all seem to be ripening almost at the same time. But it's gotten pretty tall. I think it's an annuum variety. I almost forgot to show you guys my pepper cross. So let's walk out here. Oh, looks like it got a little windy. We have a plant down, which I'll pick up here in a minute. But I forgot to show you guys my pepper cross. So this pepper cross, I have actually a little mini greenhouse around it to keep the rain off of it, since it's supposed to rain about an inch tomorrow. So that will hopefully make it not get too soggy. But this is the cross that I made last year between the lemon drop and the Korean gochu. So we've got quite a few pods set on this one. So this is the one that I saved seeds from the lemon drop. So these pods actually look very much like a lemon drop. They're getting yellow, but usually you don't see too much difference in the first. This is going to be the F1 peppers, so they look pretty close to the lemon drop. And then the one behind it, let's see if I can show you through the plastic here. So this is the one that I saved seeds from the Korean gochu, and these look very similar to a Thai pepper actually, which is really surprising because neither pepper looks like that, and they are getting pretty purple in the sunlight, and the bottom is green. So I've only gotten one ripe pod off of this plant, and it was too small to have any seeds in it. So I'm really hoping I get a couple seeds. This one looks like it might be starting to turn red. So hopefully we'll get some seeds off of there so I can try growing that out again next year and see what we get. So next year will be the F2 generation, and they say that is where you will get the most variation out of the plants that you grow. So it'll be interesting to see what we end up with. That's it for the pepper updates for this season. Thank you all for watching. We'll talk to you again soon. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. You can also find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.